Hey guys, so here we are, Monday morning, kickstarting our week with mobility. So we're gonna give it about 30 seconds before we get anyone else in. We'll give it 30 seconds before we get started. So if you do have any questions as the video goes, do put it in. I'll see it on the screen and we can answer them on the spot and get it sorted. So if you have any queries, any questions, if you don't know if you're doing something right, put it in the group chat or put it in the chat on the side, and we'll go through that. So today is all about your hips. So I'm just going to waffle here for another 20 seconds or so, let people come in. But today is all about your hips. So we're going to stay on the floor. All you're going to need is the floor, a mat, soft floor, and a bit of space. From that, you'll be sorted. So right now, I think that's going to be pretty much everyone that's in at the moment. So we get started straight away. So we're going to start sitting on our bum. We're going to start the timer. We got 15 seconds before we start. So everything that we're going to do is sitting on our bum. So we're going to oil our joints first day of the week. So sitting on our bum, legs in a V. We're just going to go into our legs 90-90. Hands behind, drop both knees down towards the left-hand side. You want to keep the chest pointing forward, and from there, we should have a perfect 90 degree at the back of each knee, in front of both hips. So from there, keep the heels down, pick the knees up and rotate side to side. Nice and slow, but you want to try and get both knees down towards the ground. So keep that chest pointing forward, don't rotate with it, otherwise we're not getting the full benefit of this internal and external rotation through the hips. So after this 15 minutes, you should feel a lot freer through the hips. And the more consistently you do it, the better you get at it. So 3 seconds to go. So 2, 1, we're going to swap it to one side, and you're going to stay on that side. We can pivot and face over that front leg. So that front leg's an external rotation, this back leg's an internal. We're going to focus on this back leg. So keep this back knee down. Let's lift this front or that back foot up. So the more we lean forward into the side, the easier it gets, the more leverage we have. Now, if we want to make it a little bit tougher, stand a little bit more upright or sit a little bit more upright. And you're going to pick that back foot up, bring it down nice and slow, and see how high you can get it. And if you can get plenty of height on it without leaning loads, we'll try sit a little bit more upright. We just want to be able to challenge ourselves. So don't make it too easy, otherwise we won't actually progress. But don't make it too hard that we won't actually progress either. So we've got to find that balance. Another 4 seconds to go. We're going to stay in the same position. So 2, 1. So now that we've done that back foot, we're going to lift this knee and this ankle up together at the same time. Bring it up nice and slow. Bring it back down nice and slow. So let's lift it up and back down. Now you'll find as we go on, you might have to change a few positions, and every exercise that we do isn't going to be the same where you lean to the side at this angle. So you will have to adjust as you go on. Okay, this one's actually a little bit easier. I can come up a little bit more upright. Just be wary of that. But the one thing you want to make sure is that we lean, but we don't re-lean, because the re-lean is what kills us. And when I say lean but don't re-lean, we have that lean we lean to the side to make it a little bit easier to lift it up, okay? And as we lift it up, so we've got 3 seconds left just watching the timer, so 2, 1. Now, I'll come back to that in a sec, but we're gonna look at this front leg now. So drop down to the elbow if you need to on this one, possibly even the shoulder. We're gonna keep this front knee down, it's just that foot coming up. So think about a piece of string attached to that heel. You're trying to pull it up towards your chest. Now you will have to drop down to your shoulder, or even your shoulder. You will have to drop down to your elbow, maybe even your shoulder to make it a little bit easier. But if you drop down to your shoulder, drop it all the way down, you can straighten this back leg to make it more comfortable with the hips. But if you're making that up onto your elbow, or you can either kickstand that hand and extend it. So now, this is probably the most difficult one out of the series that we're going to be focusing on. So this is all external rotation. So you're just going to lift that foot up nice and slowly, control it on the way down. So 2, 1, take 10 seconds. Right, now that we've done that front foot, we're going to move to the front leg. So that's the knee and ankle. Same thing what we did the back leg. So trying to bring that heel towards your chest, bring it back down nice and slow. So same again, you're trying to bring that heel towards your chest. Now you're not going to do it, but it's just a thought in your head and where to pull from. And you will start feeling this in your thigh, in your adductors. That's what's pulling that leg up. But what I was saying about the lean but don't re-lean, we all have that lean first of all, before you even pick that leg up. To make it a little bit easier, so you can get that lift off in. Don't re-lean again when we lift it up, trying to compensate and make it a little bit easier. Stay at that same angle. Keep your abs nice and tight. You want to keep everything nice and stable. So 2 seconds before you swap to the other side. So drop that there. Let's rock it over. Other side. Now we're facing the other way. So our chest is pointing over that front leg. Look at this back ankle now. So we're repeating the exact same thing again. Keep that back knee down. Lift that back foot up. And you can even go hands free if you're at that level. If not, don't worry, put the hand back down. Even if you need to, lean forward, lean to the side. Get more leverage if you have to. Everyone's going to be different. But mobility is one of those things where you're only competing against yourself. So if you do need to regress. You're not going to gain anything from getting that foot a centimetre off the ground. You're going to get a little bit higher, but control it. You're always in control of this movement. So 3, 2, 1. You got 10 seconds. You may find that you may even cramp up a little bit. If you do, just come out of that movement for a second and then come back into it. So this time it's a knee and ankle. And let's lift it up together, bring it back down. So you can imagine you're a dog against the fire hydrant just weeing for this one. And you will notice the difference between your left and right hips. You might be restricted more on the one side than you are on the other. Both hips may be the exact same. Chances of that happening are very slim. Everyone has their differences. Like my left hip is a lot different compared to my right. But the more you do this, the more you start closing the gap between the differences of the left and right. So there are 4 seconds to go. So 2, 1. Now we're going to move to this front leg. Remember, you can drop down to the elbow or you can even drop down to the shoulder if need be. It's just that front foot. So keep this knee down. You got to pick that foot up, bring it back down. So now we're changing the focus from internal rotation, what we did the left side. Now we got external rotation with this front foot. So anytime you do these movements in legs 90-90, it's always that front leg that's going to go or start in external rotation. This back leg will always start in internal rotation. And we want to get or increase our ranges of motion in these movements. And our hips do a lot of things. We go through hip flexion, which is bringing the knee up towards the chest. Hip extension, where we stand or even bring that leg in behind. We got our adduction, abduction, where the leg goes out and the leg comes in. So 3, 2, 1. Now let's drop or sit up a little bit more upright. It's a knee and ankle together. Don't worry, you won't have to know all those words. It's just loads of different movement planes is what it is. So 2, 1. And bring them back down together. So nice and slow. You shouldn't even hear the feet or the legs touch the floor as it comes back down. But don't worry about, I'm not trying to overcomplicate it at the same time. But as you go on with these sessions, you will start learning a little bit more throughout the hips. With the whole body really, but mostly with the hips. Because we have all those different movement patterns. As I said, hip flexion, extension, abduction, adduction. And internal and external rotation. There's a lot of movement planes. So 2, 1, drop that leg. Now we're back to the start, where we went side to side, where we actually got best of both worlds of the external and internal rotation. So 2, 1, drop both knees down to one side. Remember, you're maintaining that 90 degrees in both legs. Hands stay behind, and we're going to rotate side to side. Now, if you're finding this quite easy, and you're getting both knees down towards the ground with little to no effort, well then, you can walk the hands into your bum a little bit more. So now we're forced to sit a little bit more upright. And what that does is that compresses everything within that hip. So it's going to make it a little bit harder. And same again, only progress if you can get both knees down. And the highest level, you can put your hands out in front. But you got to make sure that chest stays pointing forward. So 3, 2, 1. 10 seconds, so let's point to the left side. We're looking over that left knee, straight over it. So it should be right in front of that hip, that knee. But we're going to look at this back foot. So 2, 1, keep the back knee down, lift that back foot up. And if you want to make it more challenging, use no hands to hold you up. You can actually rotate in towards that back foot. And now that is where you're going to feel a big cramp. Or if this is the first time you're doing this, chances are you're gonna cramp. Don't worry, it's gonna happen. It mightn't happen today, but it will happen down the line. Don't worry, it's normal. Just come up out of that position, give it a second, and then go back into it. So another 6 seconds in this one. So we're going more into internal rotation as we lift that foot up. 2, 1, take a rest. I could even feel a cramp coming myself towards the end there. So it does happen. So 2, 1, let's lift the back knee and ankle up together and bring them back down. But we want to maintain that 90 degrees within this leg as you lift it up. Now you'll notice that your knee might come up a little bit higher than your foot does. That's all right, we'll get better at it. So I'm actually going to put my hand down because it's actually quite hard talking and keeping my abs quite tight at the same time to give my body a good stable platform. So I'm going to regress it just a little bit to make it easier while I talk. But you guys stick to what level you're at. You got another 10 seconds to go. So we got 2 sets of this whole run through of the hips. So 2, 1. Now we're changing the focus from this back leg, which is internal rotation all right here. Flip it over, external rotations. That's that knee rotating out from the hip. And we're going to look at this front foot. Keep the knee down, drop to your elbow if you need to, and pick it up. Now don't let it flop down, control it on the way down. Same on the way up. You're not just going to pull it and let it flop. We're going to pull it up nice and slow, even pause at the top for a second, and then drop it. But like I said, you shouldn't be able to hear that touch the floor. And the more control you have in these areas, even if it's more restricted and it's at a lesser level, that's going to stand to you way more than it going at the higher level and just going racing through it. So nice and steady. 3, 2, 1. Right, now let's look at that whole front leg, the knee and ankle together. So 3, 2, 1. So the good thing about mobility is the heart rate doesn't skyrocket, so you're not out of breath as you do it. But you will get a sweat on because it is tough work at times. And with this one, this movement that we're doing right now, you can put a hand through the middle of the legs. Just so there's a bit more stability there. Because sometimes it can be quite difficult to lean and put it all to that one side. So let your second hand go there if you need to. Same again, go a little bit forward, lean a little bit back. Find those little areas where you can make it a little bit easier. Go on 2 fingers to make it a little bit tougher. 1 finger, tougher again. No hands, tougher again. So you can play around with it a little bit. So 2, 1, and rest that. So now we're going to swap over to the other side. So make sure that knee, that front knee is in front of that front hip. So from here, focus on that back leg, make sure that 90-90 is there, and lift the back foot up. So you can feel, if you look at that back leg, okay, what's happening there? We have our knee to our hip. That leg is actually, that femur is rotating inwards towards that other leg. And if we go in a standing position, what happens then? You're actually pointing that toe in towards the other foot. It's the exact same thing, just in a different position here. So you can see where the internal rotation, rotating in, comes in. So just try and break it down, simplify it a little bit, because you don't need to use those fancy words. I'll go through it at the end. So 2, 1. Now let's look at our knee and ankle together. And keep them in sync. Now your knee will naturally go a little bit higher, because there's more strength from there than we do from our knee to our ankle. So let's bring it up, bring it back down nice and slow. But remember, the lean but don't re-lean. So there is a few points to remember as you go on, but the first time you do it, they're going to slip your mind. And then it just becomes second nature the more you do it. But the 2 things I'll say, or the 2 things you have to keep an eye on for is that legs 90-90. Because as we're moving, we're constantly moving through these movements. We're not going to put that foot back down in the exact same position. So you got to keep checking, right, is that leg 90 degrees? If it is, perfect, keep going. If it's not, change it and get back into that 90 degrees. So 2, 1. Now let's look at this front leg, making sure that knee is right in front of that right hip. Drop to your elbow if you need to. This is the front foot just by itself. Lift it up. So let's go. And then the second point is a lean, but don't re-lean. That one's so important. So if you are struggling with this one, because this one is very difficult, drop down to the elbow. You get a little bit higher, but if you're still struggling with that, drop down right to the shoulder. Now I haven't given myself enough room above my head to get that one, but if you do, or if you are on the shoulder, straighten that back leg. So that just makes that top hip, that left hip, a little bit more comfortable. So I'm going to go back to where I was with that level. So 5 seconds to go. We got one more movement and that will wrap us up for today. So 2, 1, take 10 seconds. Now this is where we have that chest over that front leg. We're bringing that heel towards our chest. So 2, 1, let's lift up. And back down. So as we can see, our front hip that we're working now is in hip flexion. So if you imagine yourself in a standing position, you bring that knee up towards your chest or any way up that way, you're flexing your hip. All right, so that's your hip flexor at the front of the hip. That's that muscle there. We're flexing that hip. So that's where our hip flexion comes in. Now look at our back leg. That's pretty much a straight line from our knee all the way to the top of our shoulder. It curves a little bit, but that hip's an extension. So that's where you get the hip extension. That's our standing position. So 2, 1, and rest there. So you can go side to side, just move out the hips a little bit. They will feel a little bit tired, but they should feel a lot looser from the start of the session. So from there, I'll just quickly go over. So we have our hip flexion right here, hip extension. So it's just extending there. And they're the movements we're just trying to get into and bring them through internal and external rotation. So the more you do these guys, the better you get at them and the freer you'll feel throughout the day when you do everyday movements, especially gym work. So if you're still doing your exercises when it comes to kettlebells and body weight, this will make a huge difference to your squats, just everything. I can't stress it enough. So good work guys, and we'll see you again next time.